Sometimes I wish she'd just disappear." These words from my son's voice message shattered my world in an instant. Not from a stranger. Not from an enemy. From Deshawn, my firstborn, the child I'd sacrificed everything for. I still remember staring at my phone that Tuesday afternoon, trembling as I pressed play on an accidental message meant for my daughter. "Yo, Brielle, I don't care what Mom says. That woman's pathetic. Always playing victim, acting like we owe her something." My heart stopped. The phone nearly slipped from my fingers as he continued, his voice cold and calculating. "She's the reason we never had a real shot, you know? Watch when I finally get her to sign that house over. Then we'll really be free." 26 years of sacrifice reduced to pathetic in seconds. The midnight shifts cleaning hospital floors. The meals I skipped so they could eat. The life I put on hold so theirs could flourish. All for what? To become an obstacle they needed to remove. My tears dried quickly that day, replaced by something unexpected: determination. They wanted me gone? Fine. But they'd learn that crossing the woman who raised them alone would be the most expensive mistake of their lives. What I did next didn't just change our family. It revealed exactly who they'd underestimated all these years. Have you ever discovered someone's true feelings about you by accident? Where are you watching from today? Drop a comment if you've ever had to stand up to family who took advantage of your love. I never imagined myself as a single mother. That wasn't the life I had planned when I married Calvin Harris 28 years ago. We were young in love, and foolish enough to believe that was all we needed. Deshawn came first, a colicky baby with eyes that held the universe. I'd rock him through the night, whispering promises of the life he'd have. "You'll never want for anything," I'd tell him. "Mama's got you." 3 years later, Brielle arrived, quieter, watchful, with tiny fingers that wrapped around mine like she'd never let go. For 9 years, we were the family I'd dreamed of. Not perfect, but ours. Until the Tuesday morning Calvin kissed me goodbye, walked out the door, and never came back. No warning. No goodbye note. Just gone. I remember standing in our kitchen that night, staring at his untouched dinner plate while the children asked when Daddy was coming home. The weight of their questions nearly crushed me. "He's just working late," I lied, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. But days turned to weeks. Weeks to months. And eventually, the children stopped asking. That first year broke something in me. I'd cry in the shower where the kids couldn't hear, then emerge with a smile plastered on my face. "We're gonna be just fine," I'd tell them, though I had no idea how. Our savings evaporated like morning dew. Bill collectors called day and night. I pawned my wedding ring to keep the electricity on. Pride? I buried that luxury alongside my dreams of college degrees and family vacations. I took any job that would have me. Mornings cleaning houses for wealthy families whose children had never known hunger. Afternoons at a laundromat folding other people's clothes. Nights serving food at the hospital cafeteria, my feet swollen and aching. Sleep became a distant memory, something I'd grab in 30-minute increments between shifts. But we survived. More than that, we stayed in our home, the modest 3-bedroom that had been our sanctuary since Deshawn was born. "Why can't you come to my game?" Deshawn asked once, 11 years old and already taller than most boys his age. Basketball was his life, his escape. "Baby, I wish I could," I said, slipping my cafeteria uniform over my clothes. "But this extra shift means new shoes for you next month." His eyes, so like his father's, clouded with disappointment. But he nodded. Back then, he understood. Or at least, I thought he did. For Brielle, it was dance recitals. Her teacher told me she had natural talent, but lessons cost money we didn't have. So I'd practice with her in our living room, pushing back the coffee table to make space. One day, I promised, you'll dance on a real stage, and I'll be right there watching. She'd smile that gap-toothed smile. It's okay, Mama. This is better anyway. Those early years were hard, but we were a team. My children would help me count coins for the electric bill. They'd sit at the kitchen table doing homework while I sewed patches on their clothes. We'd laugh about the strange things rich people did, like paying someone to walk their dogs or buying water in bottles. When did it change? I've asked myself that question 1,000 times since hearing that voice message. Maybe it started when Deshaun turned 16. He got his first job at the mall and suddenly had opinions about my cheap clothes. He'd roll his eyes when I'd clip coupons. We don't need to live like we're poor, he'd say, though we were exactly that. Or perhaps it was when Brielle entered high school and started spending time with girls whose parents had swimming pools and vacation homes. She'd come home quiet, eyes downcast, like our life embarrassed her. The signs were there. I just refused to see them. By the time Deshaun finished community college and Brielle was in her second year at State, the distance between us had grown into a chasm. Their visits home became rarer. Phone calls shorter. When they did come by, they'd inspect the house with critical eyes. "Mom, you should really update this place," Brielle would say, wrinkling her nose at the furniture I'd kept clean and functional for nearly 2 decades. "This neighborhood's gone downhill," Deshaun would comment, though it was the same working-class community that had embraced us when Calvin left. Then came the questions about money. Casual at first, slipped between conversations about work or weather. "That insurance policy Grandma left you, did you ever cash that in? Have you thought about selling this place? You don't need all this space. Mom, did you ever set up that retirement account we talked about?" I brushed it off as concern. My children just wanted security for me, I told myself. Isn't that what good parents raise their children to do? Care about family? Last Christmas, they both came home. I'd worked double shifts for weeks to buy them gifts I couldn't afford. Deshaun got the expensive watch he'd been hinting at. Brielle, the designer bag her friends all carried. After dinner, when the dishes were cleared, Deshaun placed some papers on the table. "What's this?" I asked, reaching for my reading glasses. "Just some documents to update your will and property arrangements," he said casually. "You're not getting any younger, Mom. We should have this stuff figured out." Something cold slithered down my spine, but I smiled anyway. "We can look at it another time. Let's just enjoy tonight." Their exchanged glance lasted only a second, but I caught it. Disappointment. Frustration. Maybe even anger. That night, after they'd gone to bed, I found myself standing in their childhood bedrooms, touching photographs and participation trophies I'd kept pristine through the years. A heaviness settled in my chest, the weight of a question I couldn't bring myself to ask. Did my children see me as a mother anymore, or just an obstacle between them and what they wanted? I pushed the thought away. They were just stressed about money, like everyone their age. It wasn't personal. But 6 weeks later, as I sat alone in my bedroom listening to Deshaun's voice message, hearing him call me pathetic, hearing him wish for my disappearance, I finally faced the truth I'd been running from. The children I'd sacrificed everything for were plotting behind my back. They weren't just ungrateful, they were dangerous. And that realization changed everything about what I needed to do next. Have you ever ignored warning signs about someone you loved? Drop a comment below. I'd love to know if others have experienced this kind of slow-burning betrayal. And if you're finding this story helpful, hitting that subscribe button means you won't miss what happens next. That night after hearing the voice message, I didn't sleep. How could I? The words kept replaying in my mind, each repetition like a knife twisting deeper. Sometimes I wish she'd just disappear. My own son. My firstborn. I stared at the ceiling until dawn broke, my tears long dried up. By morning, a strange calm had settled over me, the kind that comes when pain pushes you beyond crying. I rose methodically, pulled a small suitcase from the closet, and began packing. Not everything. Just enough. A few changes of clothes, my medication, the photo album of my parents, and the small jewelry box containing my mother's earrings. The only inheritance I had left after selling everything else to put food on our table. I didn't leave a note. What was there to say? Dear children, I heard you wishing I would vanish, so I'm granting your wish? No. My silence would speak volumes. But this wasn't about running away. This wasn't surrender. For the first time in decades, I felt something new stirring inside me, a spark of righteous anger replacing the dull ache of maternal duty. I called a taxi instead of my usual bus. A small luxury, but today, I deserved it. Where to, ma'am? The driver asked. I gave him my cousin Yolanda's address. She lived across town in a small duplex, far enough that Deshawn and Brielle wouldn't think to look there right away. Yolanda opened her door, took one look at my face and suitcase, and simply nodded. How long you need to stay? She asked, leading me to her spare room. I don't know yet, I admitted. I just need some time to think. She handed me a spare key. Take all the time you need. And whatever those kids did, it must have been bad. I ain't seen that look on your face since Calvin walked out. Yolanda never had children of her own. Maybe that's why she understood boundaries better than most. She didn't hover or pressure me with questions. She simply made space in her refrigerator for my food, showed me where the extra towels were kept, and left me to my thoughts. That first week, I barely left the bedroom except to use the bathroom. I'd curl up under Yolanda's spare quilt, staring at my phone. No calls from either of my children. No texts asking where I was or if I was safe. Their silence confirmed everything that voice message had revealed. By the second week, grief had transformed into something harder, more focused. I started making lists. Questions I needed answers to. Information I needed to gather. The mother in me wanted to forgive, to make excuses for them. But the woman in me, the one who'd fought too hard for too long, she demanded justice. One evening, Yolanda came home from her shift at the post office to find me at her kitchen table, surrounded by papers. What's all this? She asked, setting down her purse. I'm trying to understand what they're really after, I explained. It's not just the house. There's something more. Yolanda sat across from me, pushing aside a stack of bank statements to make room for her coffee mug. You think they're in trouble? I think they're desperate, I replied. And desperate people do desperate things. The next day, I went to the bank where I'd kept my modest savings account for 20 years. Martina, the manager, had watched my children grow up through photos on my phone. Lorraine, we haven't seen you in a while. Everything okay? I forced a smile. Just need to check a few things, if you don't mind. In her office, with the door closed, I asked the question that had been burning in my mind. Has anyone tried to access my accounts recently? Either in person or online? Martina's hesitation told me everything before she even spoke. I shouldn't really. Please, I interrupted. It's important. She sighed, typing something into her computer. There were 3 failed login attempts to your online banking last month. The system locked after the 3rd try. And... She paused, looking uncomfortable. Your son came by about 6 weeks ago. Said you'd sent him to deposit a check, but he also asked about account balances and whether you had any CDs maturing soon. My heart sank. Thank you for telling me. Lorraine, is everything all right? I nodded, though nothing was all right. I'd like to change all my passwords and security questions. And I want to remove any cosigners from all my accounts. Her eyes widened slightly. That would include Deshawn on your checking account. Yes, I said firmly. Especially Deshawn. That was just the beginning. Over the next 3 weeks, I became a detective in my own life. I requested credit reports, visited the county records office, and even hired a modestly priced lawyer who specialized in elder fraud, though at 56, I hated thinking of myself that way. What I discovered shocked even my prepared heart. Deshawn, my golden boy with the charming smile, was drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out. A car loan in default. Even a payday loan with an interest rate that made my stomach turn. All told, he owed nearly $70,000. Money he didn't have and couldn't repay on his entry-level salary. But the real shock came when I discovered Brielle's name linked to some of his accounts. My quiet, thoughtful daughter who'd always been so careful with the little money she had, she'd been co-signing his loans. Enabling his financial disaster. And then I found the real estate websites on my home computer's search history. How to transfer property to family members. Tax implications of gifting a house. How to persuade elderly parents to downsize. Elderly. The word stung like a slap. In their eyes, I wasn't just mom anymore. I was an old woman standing between them and what they wanted. They need money, I told Yolanda one night over dinner. They're both in deep, Deshawn worse than Brielle. They see the house as their way out. Yolanda shook her head. The house you've been paying on for 25 years? The one you kept by working yourself nearly to death? That house. Yes, I whispered. The only thing of value I have. What are you going to do? I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. I don't know yet. But I'm not letting them take it. Not like this. That night, unable to sleep, I sat on Yolanda's patio watching the moon rise over the neighborhood. My phone lit up with a text, the first one from either of my children since I'd left. Deshawn, Mom, where are you? Getting worried. Need to talk about some financial stuff. Important. Not are you safe? Not I miss you. Just financial stuff. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then withdrew without answering. The next text came an hour later, this time from Brielle. Brielle, Mom, please answer Deshawn. We just want to make sure you're okay. House looks empty. Did you go on a trip? 3 weeks. It had taken them 3 weeks to worry about my absence. And only because they couldn't find me to discuss financial stuff. Something crystallized in that moment, a clarity born from pain but hardened into resolve. The tears that had been my constant companion these past weeks dried up. In their place came something new, determination. I went back inside, pulled out a fresh legal pad, and began writing. Not a letter to my children, but a plan. Step by step, day by day, what I needed to do to protect myself and what remained of my life. By dawn, the outline was complete. It would require courage, resources I barely had, and a hardness I'd never needed as a mother, but that I'd now have to find as a woman defending what was hers. I slept then, for the first time in weeks, without dreaming of my children's faces. Without hearing Deshawn's voice wishing I would disappear. When I woke, Yolanda had left for work, but a mug of coffee waited by a note. Whatever you decide, I got your back. I sipped the coffee, reviewing my plan in the morning light. It wasn't just about keeping the house anymore. It wasn't even about punishing them, though there would be consequences they couldn't imagine. This was about reclaiming my life. About showing my children exactly who I was. Not the doormat they'd come to expect, but the fighter who'd raised them single-handedly. The woman who'd kept them fed and housed when their father abandoned them without a backward glance. I pulled out my phone and made the first call, to a community housing advocate I'd read about. Then another to my bank. By noon, the wheels were in motion. Let them think I'd vanished into thin air. Let them wonder where I'd gone. They'd find out soon enough, and when they did, they'd realize that underestimating me was the biggest mistake they'd ever made. Has anyone ever underestimated you? Have you ever been pushed so far that you finally had to stand up for yourself? I read all comments, so tell me where you're watching from and if you've ever had to create a plan to protect yourself from the people who should have protected you. If this story is helping you see red flags in your own relationships, hit subscribe. What I did next changed everything, and might just help you avoid the heartbreak I couldn't escape. My first meeting with Tamika Johnson, the community housing advocate, took place at a small coffee shop 3 blocks from Yolanda's duplex. I dressed carefully that morning, not in my usual bargain store clothes, but in the one good pantsuit I kept for special occasions. I needed to be taken seriously. "Miss Harris," Tamika said, extending her hand. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "You mentioned on the phone you're interested in property donation options?" I nodded, hands wrapped around my coffee mug for warmth. "My home. It's paid off except for about $30,000. 3 bedrooms, good neighborhood. I want to know what happens if I donate it." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "That's a significant asset. Most people your age are thinking about leveraging equity for retirement, not giving property away." "Most people haven't heard their children plotting to take it from them," I replied quietly. Something in my tone must have revealed the depth of my pain, because her professional demeanor softened. For the next hour, she explained options I'd never considered: community land trusts, housing cooperatives, transitional home programs for women leaving abusive situations. "The house could help dozens of families over time," she explained. "Single mothers who need a safe start, just like you once did." Something about that possibility lit a spark in me. My home, the center of so much struggle and sacrifice, could become a haven for women fighting the same battles I had. There was poetry in that, and justice too. What would I need to do? I asked. Tamika slid a business card across the table. "Start by talking to this attorney. He specializes in property law and works with our organization. Initial consultation is free." I tucked the card into my purse, feeling the first flutter of possibility. This wasn't just about striking back at my children anymore. This was about creating meaning from betrayal. The attorney, Mr. Rodriguez, welcomed me into his modest office 2 days later. No fancy artwork or mahogany desks, just practical furniture and walls lined with law books. It made me trust him immediately. "Before we discuss donation options," he said after I'd explained my situation, "I need to ask, are you financially secure without this property? Donation is generous, but I don't recommend it if you'll struggle afterward." His concern touched me. When was the last time someone had worried about my well-being first? "I have my pension from the hospital," I explained. "It's not much, but I've always lived simply. And I have about $42,000 in savings." I didn't mention that this amount had once been higher, before helping with Deshawn's first car and Brielle's college expenses. Mr. Rodriguez made notes. "And your health is good? No major medical expenses on the horizon?" "I'm healthy," I assured him. "High blood pressure, but it's controlled with medication." He nodded, then looked me directly in the eyes. "Miss Harris, I have to ask this. Are you certain this isn't just about punishing your children? Because there are less drastic ways to protect your assets from financial pressure." The question stung, but I appreciated his directness. "At first, maybe it was," I admitted. "But now, I keep thinking about all the single mothers out there, struggling like I did. This house could mean something more than just a payday for my ungrateful children." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "All right. Let me walk you through the process. For the next hour, he outlined everything: tax implications, legal requirements, timeline. He explained how I could structure the donation to allow myself a life tenancy if I wished, or how I could designate specific uses for the property. What about my remaining mortgage? I asked. The receiving organization would need to either assume it or pay it off. For a property with only $30,000 remaining on a much higher value, most would consider that manageable. By the time I left his office, clutching a folder of information, my vague idea had transformed into something concrete. Something powerful. But first, I needed to protect myself financially. The next morning, I visited 3 different banks. At the first, I closed every account that had either of my children as authorized users or beneficiaries. At the second, I opened a new checking account with only my name on it. At the third, I rented a small safety deposit box and secured my mother's jewelry and important documents. Is there anything else I can help you with today, Ms. Harris? The bank manager asked. Yes, I said firmly. I need to make sure no one can access information about these new accounts. Not over the phone, not in person. No one but me. He nodded, adding special security notes to my file. I watched him type, wondering when I'd become this person. A woman who couldn't trust her own children with her financial information. The thought brought a wave of sadness, but I pushed it aside. Sentimentality was a luxury I could no longer afford. Next came the credit check. I'd never been particularly tech-savvy, but necessity forced quick learning. In Yolanda's spare room, I created accounts with all 3 major credit bureaus and placed freezes on my credit. What's all this about? Yolanda asked, finding me surrounded by printouts of my credit reports. Making sure they can't open anything new in my name, I explained. You'd be surprised how much information they know. My social security number, birth date, even my mother's maiden name. Yolanda sat on the edge of the bed. You really think they'd go that far? I looked up at her. 3 weeks ago, I wouldn't have believed my son could say he wished I would disappear. Now? I'm not taking chances. The credit reports revealed more than I expected. A credit card inquiry from 6 months earlier with both my name and Deshawn's. It had been denied, thankfully, but the attempt was there in black and white. Had they already tried using my information without my knowledge? Each discovery hardened my resolve. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. This was about protecting myself from very real threats. Between these practical preparations, I focused on strengthening myself mentally. For too long, I defined myself solely as a mother. Sacrificing, giving, forgiving. Now I needed to rediscover the woman beneath. I started small. A daily walk around Yolanda's neighborhood. A library card for the branch down the street. Small acts of independence that had nothing to do with my children or their needs. One afternoon, I found myself in front of a community center with a sign advertising Tai Chi classes for seniors. The word seniors made me flinch, but I went in anyway. The instructor, a gentle-voiced man named Walter, showed me basic movements designed to center both body and mind. Breathing is everything, he explained. When confronted with chaos, return to your breath. I practiced daily, feeling foolish at first with the slow, deliberate movements. But gradually, something shifted. My thoughts grew clearer. My panic attacks, which had plagued me since finding the voice message, became less frequent. In quiet moments, I rehearsed what I would say when I finally confronted my children. Sometimes I imagined myself cold and businesslike. Other times, unleashing years of hurt in a torrent of accusations. But neither felt right. You're trying too hard to script it, Yolanda observed one evening. When the moment comes, you'll find the words. She was right, of course. This wasn't about crafting the perfect speech. It was about standing in my truth, whatever form it took. 4 weeks into my stay with Yolanda, I received a certified letter. My children had reported me missing to the police. The officer who'd taken the report had apparently recognized my name. His mother had been a patient at the hospital where I'd worked for years. Instead of filing an official missing persons case, he'd done some checking and discovered I'd been accessing my accounts and using my credit card. Not the actions of someone in danger. He'd told my children I was fine, but choosing not to contact them. The letter included his contact information if I wanted to confirm my safety. I called him immediately. "Ms. Harris," Officer Powell said. "Glad to hear from you directly. Your children seem quite concerned." "I'm perfectly safe," I assured him. "Just taking some time away." "I thought as much," he replied. "Mind if I ask what prompted this? Your son seemed to think you might be experiencing confusion." My blood boiled at the implication. "Officer Powell, I'm of sound mind. I left because I discovered my children planning to pressure me into signing over my home to them. I'm taking steps to protect myself legally." His tone changed immediately. "I understand. My grandmother went through something similar with my uncle. Would you like me to connect you with any resources?" "No, but thank you. I have good support and legal advice." After hanging up, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Anger at their attempt to paint me as confused or incompetent. But also a grim satisfaction. They were looking for me now. Good. Let them wonder. Let them worry. The final piece fell into place when Mr. Rodriguez called with news. He'd spoken with the Women's Housing Coalition, and they were very interested in my property. "They'd like to meet with you next week to discuss specifics," he said. "If all goes well, we could begin transfer paperwork by the end of the month." I thanked him and hung up, a sense of calm settling over me. The plan was working. All the pieces were aligning. That night, I took out the small notepad where I'd been tracking my steps and added one final item: confrontation. Circling it twice, I felt not fear but certainty. I was ready to face my children. Ready to show them exactly who they'd underestimated. I decided I would return home that weekend. My home, bought with my sweat and tears. I'd walk in with my head high and my resolve firm. And when they inevitably appeared, as they would once word spread that I'd returned, I would be waiting with truth they never expected. Before falling asleep, I checked my phone one last time. Another text from Deshawn: "Mom, please call us. We need to talk about the house. Market's hot right now." Still about the house. Always about the house. Little did he know, I had plans for that house that would shock him to his core. Have you made your escape plan yet? If someone betrayed you today, would you know what to do to protect yourself? Subscribe now. What happens next might just save you from making the same painful mistakes I did. I returned to my house on a Sunday. There's something fitting about confrontations happening on Sundays. A day meant for rest and family turned into a battlefield of truth. Yolanda drove me, her ancient Buick idling at the curb as I stood on my own front lawn, key in hand. 5 weeks had passed since I'd left. The grass needed cutting. Mail overflowed from the box. Small signs of neglect that proved my children hadn't bothered maintaining the home they so desperately wanted to claim. "You sure about this?" Yolanda called through the passenger window. I nodded, squaring my shoulders. "I'm sure. Call me when it's done. I'll come get you." As her car disappeared around the corner, a strange calm washed over me. The house looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than the fortress of memories I'd built in my mind. Just wood and brick and 30 years of life, good and bad. My key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, stale air greeted me, and something else. The scent of fast food and unfamiliar cologne. Someone had been here, recently. I moved through the living room, noting small changes. The throw pillows I'd arranged so carefully were tossed carelessly on the floor. Empty beer bottles lined the coffee table. On the mantel, family photos had been rearranged, several featuring me pushed to the back, as if I were already gone. In the kitchen, dishes filled the sink. My good tablecloth lay crumpled on a chair, stained with what looked like pizza sauce. They'd been living here, making themselves at home while I was missing. I didn't bother exploring upstairs. Instead, I settled into my recliner, the one piece of furniture I'd splurged on after working double shifts for 6 months straight. I placed the folder from Mr. Rodriguez on my lap, straightened my blouse, and waited. I didn't wait long. The front door opened with the familiar squeak I'd never gotten around to fixing. Voices, Deshawn's bass mingled with Brielle's lighter tones, drifted in from the entryway. Told you we should have cleaned up yesterday. If the realtor sees it like this. They rounded the corner and froze. Deshawn dropped the paper bag he was carrying. Brielle's hand flew to her mouth. Mom. The word escaped Deshawn like air from a punctured tire. I didn't smile. Didn't move. Just studied their faces, the shock, the guilt, and underneath it all, the calculation already beginning behind their eyes. You're back, Brielle stammered, recovering first. She stepped forward as if to hug me, then hesitated when I didn't rise to meet her. We were so worried. We filed a police report and everything. I know, I said simply. Deshawn found his voice. Where have you been? We've been calling and texting for weeks. You just disappeared. The irony of his words, echoing his own wish from that voice message, wasn't lost on me. Isn't that what you wanted? For me to just disappear? His expression flickered, confusion giving way to wariness. What are you talking about? The voice message, Deshawn. The one you meant to send to Brielle but sent to me instead. The color drained from his face. Beside him, Brielle went still. What voice message? She asked, eyes darting between us. I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen a few times, and his voice filled the room cruel and clear. Yo Brielle, I don't care what Mom says. That woman's pathetic. Always playing victim, acting like we owe her something. I swear, sometimes I wish she'd just disappear. As his recorded voice continued, detailing their plans for my house, Brielle's eyes widened. Deshawn's jaw tightened. When it finished, silence stretched between us, taut as a wire. That wasn't, Deshawn stuttered. Wasn't what? I asked quietly. Wasn't meant for me to hear? Or wasn't what you really think? He ran a hand over his face. Look, I was frustrated that day. You keep refusing to discuss your finances, the house. My finances, I interrupted. My house. We're just trying to help you plan for the future, Brielle jumped in, her voice taking on that patronizing tone she developed in recent years. You're not getting any younger, Mom. This place is too big for you to maintain. So this is about concern for me? I asked, gesturing to the beer bottles, the mess they'd made in my absence. Moving in while I'm gone, bringing in realtors? Deshawn's expression hardened. We thought something might have happened to you. We were worried. So worried you reported me confused to the police? So worried you've been trying to access my bank accounts? Brielle at least had the grace to look ashamed. Deshawn just crossed his arms defensively. You've been making bad decisions lately, Mom. Forgetting things. We're just trying to protect you. Rage flared in my chest, hot and sudden. Protect me? Or protect your inheritance? That's not fair, Brielle protested. Fair. I stood up slowly, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. Let's talk about fair. Was it fair when I worked 3 jobs to keep you both fed after your father left? Was it fair when I missed your games and recitals because I was scrubbing other people's toilets to pay our mortgage? Deshaun rolled his eyes, a gesture so dismissive it stole my breath. Here we go again with the guilt trip, he muttered. Something broke inside me then, the last thread of restraint I'd been clinging to. Guilt trip? You think that's what this is? I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, Deshaun. I'm stating facts. Facts you seem to have conveniently forgotten while planning to cash in on the one thing of value I managed to hold on to. I stepped closer, looking directly into the eyes of my firstborn. I found the credit inquiries. I know about the debt. $70,000, Deshaun? Credit cards, payday loans? And you, I turned to Brielle, co-signing for him when you know he can't repay. Their stunned expressions confirmed everything. They hadn't expected this version of me, informed, decisive, unafraid. We were going to tell you, Brielle said weakly. When? Before or after pressuring me to sign over my house? Before or after having me declared incompetent? Deshaun's facade cracked. We needed help, okay? You're sitting on this big house. That I paid for, I cut in. Every brick, every nail. While you two were sleeping in warm beds, I was keeping the lights on and food in the fridge. And you never let us forget it, he shot back. Poor sacrificing mom, working herself to death for her ungrateful children. You think we didn't feel the burden of that every single day? The guilt? The expectations? His words landed like blows. Had that been their experience? Had my sacrifices become chains I unknowingly wrapped around them? But no, this wasn't about my parenting. This was about grown adults plotting to take what wasn't theirs. If you needed help, I said more quietly, you could have asked. Instead, you conspired behind my back. You hoped I would just disappear, so you could solve your financial problems with my home. Brielle stepped forward, tears welling in her eyes. Always the emotional manipulator, even as a child. Mom, please. We made mistakes. We're sorry. Let's just sit down and figure this out as a family. Family. The word almost made me laugh. That's why I'm here, I said, patting the folder in my lap. To figure things out. Hope flickered across their faces. They thought I was surrendering, that maternal love had won out over self-preservation. So you'll help us? Deshaun asked, already calculating his victory. I opened the folder and removed the documents inside. I've made a decision about the house. They leaned forward eagerly. I've donated it to the Women's Housing Coalition. The words landed in the room like a bomb. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. They stared at me, then at the papers, then back at me. You what? Deshaun finally choked out. Donated it. The papers are being finalized next week. It's going to become transitional housing for single mothers escaping abuse or hardship. Women like I once was. Brielle collapsed onto the couch, hand over her mouth. Deshaun's face contorted with rage. You can't do that, he shouted. This is our inheritance. Our security. It was never yours, I said calmly. It was mine. Earned with my labor, my sacrifices. And now it will help other women fight the battles I fought, without children who view them as obstacles to wealth. Deshaun stepped toward me, fists clenched. We'll fight this. You're not thinking clearly. No court would. Every court would, I interrupted. I've had full psychological evaluations. I've consulted with 3 separate attorneys. The donation is legal, binding, and completely within my rights. You vindictive bitch, he hissed, the mask completely dropped now. After everything we've done for you. Done for me. I laughed, the sound surprising even myself. What exactly have you done for me, Deshaun? Besides, move into my house while I was gone and make plans to sell it from under me. His mouth opened and closed, no answer forthcoming. Brielle tried a different approach. Mom, please. Deshawn didn't mean what he said in that message. We love you. We need you. Don't throw away everything because of one mistake. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. The girl who once followed me everywhere, who used to curl against my side during thunderstorms. Now a stranger using emotional manipulation to get what she wanted. This isn't about punishment, I said softly. It's about consequences. And choices. I'm choosing to do something meaningful with what I've built, instead of enabling the entitlement you've both displayed. I gathered the papers back into the folder and stood. I've also closed our joint accounts and removed myself from any financial connection to either of you. Your debts are your own to solve. Deshawn's face darkened. So that's it? You're just cutting us off? Your own children. My children died the moment I heard that voice message, I said, the words tearing from somewhere deep inside me. The people standing before me now are strangers wearing their faces. I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. I'll be back next weekend to collect my personal belongings. I expect the house to be empty and clean. Anything left behind will be donated along with the property. Where will you go? Brielle asked, tears streaming down her face. That's no longer your concern, I replied. Just as your financial problems are no longer mine. As I stepped onto the porch, Deshawn called after me, his voice cracking. You'll regret this, Mom. You need us more than you know. I turned back one last time, meeting his gaze steadily. I raised 2 children alone after your father abandoned us. I kept this roof over our heads when we had nothing. I survived poverty, exhaustion, and heartbreak. What makes you think I need anyone who wishes I would disappear? With that, I walked away from the house I'd sacrificed everything for. Each step lighter than the last, my back straight, my head high. Behind me, I heard Deshawn's shout, something breaking against a wall. But I didn't look back. Some chapters don't deserve a second glance. I pulled out my phone and called Yolanda. It's done, I said. You can come get me now. As I waited at the curb, watching clouds drift across the sky, I felt something unfamiliar bloom in my chest. Not grief. Not anger. But something sweeter and more powerful. Freedom. Have you ever stood up to someone who took you for granted? The moment you stop being a doormat is the moment your real life begins. Subscribe now if you want to know what happened next, because this confrontation was just the beginning of how I rebuilt my life after betrayal. The morning after the confrontation, I signed a lease on a small apartment downtown. 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, and a tiny balcony overlooking a park. The building had security doors and a doorman named Earl who reminded me of my late father, all gruff exterior hiding a gentle heart. Moving in alone, ma'am? He asked as I carried in my first box. Starting fresh, I replied. Something in my tone must have told him not to press further. The apartment felt empty at first, just basic furniture I'd purchased from a discount store and a few precious mementos I'd taken when I first left the house. No family photos. No inherited trinkets laden with memories. Just clean, open space waiting for a new story. I slept better that first night than I had in years. No creaking old house. No ghosts of broken promises. Just me, breathing deeply in a space that was entirely mine. The first message came 3 days later. Deshawn, his anger having cooled into calculation. Mom, I've been thinking about what you said. Maybe we can work something out. The donation isn't final yet, right? We could talk to the lawyers together. I didn't respond. Brielle tried next, her approach more emotional. Mom, please. We made a terrible mistake. Deshaun was wrong to say those things, and I was wrong to go along with his plans. Can we just meet for coffee? Just to talk? For a moment, my heart wavered. The mother in me, the part that had bandaged scraped knees and checked for monsters under beds, wanted to believe them. Wanted to forgive. But then I remembered the cold calculation in Deshaun's voice on that message. The way they'd moved into my house while I was gone, making plans to sell it from under me. Some betrayals cut too deep for simple forgiveness. I typed a short reply to Brielle, "I need time. Please respect that." She didn't. Neither did Deshaun. The messages turned from pleading to demanding, then back to emotional manipulation. When those failed, they tried involving others. Mutual friends, distant relatives, even my former co-workers. "Your children are worried sick," my old supervisor from the hospital cafeteria told me when she called. "They say you're not thinking clearly, that you gave away your house." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in decades," I replied. "And what I do with my property is my business, not theirs." After 2 weeks of this, I changed my phone number. Another week later, I started a part-time job at a small bookstore 3 blocks from my apartment. The owner, Teresa, was a widow who understood boundaries and the peace that comes from rebuilding. "Family can be the greatest blessing or the heaviest burden," she told me one quiet afternoon as we shelved new arrivals. "Sometimes both at once." Those words stayed with me. My children had been both. My greatest joy and ultimately, my deepest wound. But the wound was healing now, scabbing over with each day I spent reclaiming myself. I started small traditions that were just for me. Sunday morning coffee on my balcony. Wednesday evening walks in the park. A cooking class where I learned to make meals for one without feeling lonely about it. 6 months passed. The house donation was finalized. The Women's Housing Coalition sent me photos of the first family who moved in. A young mother with twin girls who had fled an abusive husband. Her eyes in the photograph held the same determination I'd once felt, raising children alone. "Your gift has already saved lives," the director wrote. This family had nowhere else to go. That night I cried, not from grief but from something richer. Purpose. Meaning. The knowledge that my pain had transformed into someone else's salvation. Fall turned to winter. The holidays approached, my first without family. I braced myself for loneliness, for regret. It never came. Instead, I hosted a small dinner for the bookstore staff. I volunteered at a community kitchen on Christmas Day. I lived fully presently, without the weight of others' expectations pressing on my chest. In January, a hand-delivered letter arrived from Deshaun. No demands this time. No manipulation. Just raw truth. "I've been in therapy," he wrote. "Trying to understand why I treated you the way I did. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I see it now. All you gave up. All you endured. I'm sorry it took losing you to recognize your worth." I read the letter twice, then placed it in a drawer. Not rejected, not embraced. Just acknowledged. Perhaps someday I'd respond. Perhaps not. The choice was mine alone. By spring, word reached me through mutual friends that Deshaun had taken a second job to tackle his debt. Brielle had moved to another state for graduate school, living modestly in a shared apartment. They were learning to stand on their own, a lesson I should have taught them years ago instead of shouldering their burdens. As for me, I found freedom in simplicity, joy in self-sufficiency, and most importantly, peace in establishing boundaries that honored my worth. The mother who sacrificed everything no longer exists. In her place stands a woman who finally understands that love without respect is just slow poison. That giving until you're empty doesn't make you virtuous, it makes you vulnerable. Sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away. Sometimes the most powerful gift is consequences. I don't know if I'll ever fully reconcile with my children. Some bridges, once burned, leave only ashes. But I do know this: I'll never again allow anyone to make me feel small in order to make themselves feel big. I'll never again give away pieces of myself hoping to be loved in return. True love doesn't demand surrender. It celebrates strength. So if you're watching this and recognizing your own story and mine, if you're giving and giving while others are only taking, know that you have the right to say enough. You have the right to reclaim your life, your dignity, your peace. The people who truly love you will respect your boundaries. The ones who don't, well, they were never really loving you at all. Are you still letting someone treat you like a doormat? Or are you ready to stand up for yourself? Subscribe now if you're tired of being taken for granted. Your new life is waiting on the other side of no. Because the truth I learned too late is this: sometimes the family you need most is the one you build after leaving the one you were born into.